have a bicycle in the back with the tires taken off. The wipers on this car, another thing that people just don't talk about when they review it. The wipers work really well. I can push back and forth and it's like pops back and forth just a little bit. Cooling on this car. The gauge cluster, let's talk about that. Reliability on the C6, this whole thing gets very hot. Here's a huge thing. Every single ground cable in this car that I have found is painted over. One thing that I highly recommend if you do own this car and you take it on anything more than like 45-minute trips, just keep that in your car. It will save you. What's so sweet about this car is it's lightweight. It makes really good power. One thing to note about this clutch that a lot of C6 owners that I've talked to is that storage space in this car, cruise control on this car, handling capability in this car, nighttime driving. So that's one thing I like. Everything is just kind of low profile. It's not taking a bunch of space up. Little things like that as a buyer, it's pesky things that no one talks about. Anyway, thanks for being patient, and I really think this video will be valuable to a lot of you guys. Really excited. I've been meaning to do this for a while, but I wanted to know the car enough to make this video. So I'm road tripping the car. It's about an 8-hour drive there and 8 hours back. I've been meaning to make a review video of this car and talk about all the little quirks and the subtle things that people really don't bring up, because when they review the car, they haven't either owned it or they're just test driving it, right? And they're doing a review off of only a few hours of driving it. So little things that I want to point out that I hope will be very useful to someone who is looking to get a C6, specifically a Z06. Just like little things, like these mirrors don't extend this way. So of course, half the time the sun is right in this area right here. So that's like a small little quirk that no one ever brings up in their videos. Another quirk is the plastic covers on these mirrors are very cheap. One of the sides on this one is broken, so it like squeaks when it's opening and closing. And I have another video talking about a lot of the issues that C6s commonly have, and I don't want to make that, I don't want to derail this video talking about the issues, because this is a really fun and capable car, and I want to focus on, you know, how amazing it is, and when everything's running right, what's the driving experience? So I'll probably just hop around here and there, so bear with me. Alright, let's start off with shifting. I have driven only a handful of manuals, not many sport cars. I think just one Mustang. This is a 2008, which I believe has the updated, can't remember the name of it, I think it's the T56. I can't remember. Anyway, it is very notchy. I don't think that this is a car that you would want to put on like a shifter or something. It's very notchy. It's smooth when the car is cold and the transmission is cold. It's a little bit more notchy than normal. I like that. It has never been an issue or something that I'm like, oh man, it's just really clunky. It just feels very, very crisp. But yeah, cruising in 6th gear, going 75 miles an hour. I'm at slightly over 2,000 RPM, and it's singing it. It's running good. This car is heavily modified, and so this review probably will be slightly different than, let's just say, a totally stock. I think mainly in the department of reliability and some of the issues that I'll talk about toward the end of the video. This is an extremely loud road. I don't think I have to shout. I'm just kind of talking a little bit louder because I want to make sure the video picks up. I don't have a good microphone set up on the GoPro. Honestly, I've had a Toyota Corolla, and the road noise on that is almost worse than this. I think once I get the exhaust leaks fixed, it will become even better. One thing I absolutely love about this car is the stock exhaust setup, specifically the mufflers. I think the newer C6s all have this. I think the older C6s did not. Basically, it has a valve inside both sides of the muffler that is vacuum actuated, that opens after 3,000 RPM, and basically instead nose out the trailer and licking the air in front of me. What the heck? Good old Texas. So modifications on this: headers, intake manifold, intake. I don't know what's been done to the heads. I'm like 99% sure they've replaced the valves. That's a very common issue, where the valves and the valve seats, I'm kind of trusting, I'm going out on a limb and trusting that the previous owner did all of that. And I mean, everybody knows about the LS7 stock valve train issues. People swap both of the valves and the guides. This car does not have roller rockers, and I think it also doesn't have oil on the little nub that's pushing up and down on the valve spring, and it's something that you can definitely replace. I was surprised whenever I pulled the valve cover that it appears that they have stock rockers in there, and that's something on my list that I want to upgrade. So more about driving. This car does not have the stock steering wheel, which everyone hates on. It's more of, it just doesn't look very good, but it's practical, so I don't really have any complaints about this, but I love this steering wheel. I think these go for like $400 to $500. It's just like a carbon fiber. It's got it squared off on the top and bottom. Love the steering wheel. It does have steering wheel controls on the right hand side. Unfortunately, it's not hooked up to the radio. This also has an aftermarket radio. I can't really talk about the OEM style system, but one of the things on these cars, if you get it, just get a really good double din Alpine stereo with a backup camera. I mean, I know it's like 700, 800, but I would say that's one of the upgrades. That's not that hard. Like a lot of these newer cars, the stereo is integrated into the system, so you can't pull it out, and it's not easy to replace. So that's one thing I love about the C6 is that's a really cheap but very, I mean, an Apple Play backup camera, but something really nice to have on this car that's easy to do. Small thing, the C7s a little bit, and the C8s kind of have this rail, which is cool, and it feels more like a cockpit, but so it's nice to be able to just kind of relax your hand over here. And I think on the C8s, it's harder to do that because it's just like this whole cockpit and rail that segregates you. So that's one thing I like. Everything is just kind of low profile. It's not taking a bunch of space up. AC controls on this car, they work. It's something that I'm glad it's not way too fancy. If anything, it's fancy enough to have some little issues. Like it's sometimes can be a little bit flaky with, like, you press the one or two seat positions and it resets the AC to the last known value on that, which is kind of odd. And then sometimes when you start the car, it will not save. Man, somebody just had a blowout in front of me. It will not save that data. So AC system works. I don't really have any complaints. It's not the best. It's not perfect. If anything, I wish it just had, to simplify things and make the car just that a little bit cheaper, is just to have like on and off fan. But honestly, it works. It works well. You set it to 83 and you don't have to think about it. So overall, I would say not an issue. It's a little bit flaky sometimes, but it's a simple system and I enjoy it. It works. So the C6s, the heated seats sometimes get flaky on the driver's side. I think the issue with that is every time you get in and out of the car, the seat resets its position based on pulling the parking brake. That's something that from my research, I don't think you can just turn off easily. I think you have to either just not pull the parking brake, or you got to pull the fuse on the adjustable seats. But I really dislike every single time it's useful. But like, if you're like So I don't really have any complaints about the seats, besides that minor kind of popping back and forth and the automatic adjustment constantly every single time you pull the parking brake. Little things that you can very easily work around. But overall, I like the seats. The headrest is comfortable. A lot of the newer cars, it's like further up and it's you can't really adjust it. This is just, it feels right. It feels good. I'm pretty happy with the seats. Storage space in this car is pretty dang good. I have a bicycle in the back with the tires taken off. It's full-size mountain bike. And then I've got some tools back there. I've got some oils, some water, some clothes. I've got my backpack, which I could definitely fit this guy in the back. I've got a cooler beside me. I could also probably fit that in the back. One thing I love about this car, you kind of sacrifice the back seats to have a lot more space in there. So it's different, you know, it's different than having like a little hatchback like on a Mustang or a Challenger, but I've been happy with how that works. The visibility out of this car could be better, but I've never thought, man, I cannot see anything out of this. The gauge cluster, let's talk about that. I really was surprised, and I really like the gauge cluster. It does have like the older 2000s greenish lettering kind of at the bottom section, that bottom rectangle that you can pull up trip and oil pressure, and but I really like it's simple. It works, it's simple. I prefer the gauges in front of me. They look crisp. Whenever I saw videos, a lot of people are like, it looks okay. I think they're great. Everything looks very crisp. The lights are in the right place. At night driving, it looks good. I really like the gauge cluster. I also enjoy the heads-up display. There's a lot of different settings. You can set it to street and track mode with the RPMs coming up. You can set the adjustment level, the brightness on it. Really like that about this car. Just huge fan of this. It's simple. It works. You can pull up oil pressure, tire pressure, temperature, but you can set that on the bottom, and it's a very simple, easy to use menu that you can adjust when you're driving, and it's not a pain. So I really like that about this car. You've got like this right-hand section of buttons here that you press for like fuel, gas mileage, trip, all those things. And then the left-hand side, these control the heads-up display, which you can also turn off. If sometimes on night drives, I just prefer to turn it off. That's something I love about this car, is just a lot of the controls and interface is simple, and I so much prefer that over a lot of the newer cars these days, for a lot of different reasons, but it's just easier to use. You don't have to think about it. It's like this button does this, and it works every time, and it's not like you have to navigate some complex display to get to what you need to get to. Something that people don't talk about is, generally from what I've seen, is when you modify this car, your miles per gallon calculator that's programmed into this is wrong. It's not quite on. So I'm thinking if this car was OEM and stock, it would probably be accurate and be great. What I've noticed is on the highway going 75, it's saying I'm getting 14, 15 miles per gallon, which is pretty abysmal. On this car, I mean, there's a lot done to it. It's definitely, with the cam, I would say it's going to use more gas. When I clocked my mileage on several full tanks of just highway driving, I got a solid 20 miles per gallon. If I was going 75, 80, did a little bit of accelerating, get 18, 19. But if you're going 65 to 75 on the highway, and this is a heavily modified Corvette, it's pretty good on gas mileage. And a lot of people say that from what I've seen online, is that the stock Z06, and I think the stock LS3s get really good gas mileage for what it's worth. People commonly say it's 24, 26. Some people even say like 30 miles per gallon, which I think is doable. Something that I want to be honest, I'm a little bit worried about this trip. I haven't really been able to take a longer trip, which I really enjoy doing in this car because I've been working a lot, and because this thing has had a lot of issues in the past, time since I've owned it. It hasn't made me comfortable enough, or I have to lots of little things. So this trip is going on a 7-8 hour drive through parts of Texas that you won't find a city for 60 miles. I'm a little bit worried, and you really shouldn't be, you know, on a muscle car. But I mean, this is a heavily modified car, so I can't really say that. I definitely don't. I'm not condoning like all C6s are trash. Like, no, it's just my particular thing with heavy modification. Yeah, like little things you just don't think about is all of your belt tensioners and your belts are not designed to have like a 500 to 600 wheel motor driving them. They're not engineered to do that. So like full throttle acceleration where you're really spooling up fast and everything's, you know, getting hot, or you're downshifting super fast, over time I feel like that it's just more wear and tear on everything. Different for each manufacturer. Toyota, Honda, keeping electronics in here, I do not recommend if you're pushing the car along. The AC vents on this car, a lot of people gripe, they're simple, they're nothing to them, they're round, but they work. They work, they're simple. I've never been like, oh man, they suck to use. They don't have any ISO, so you can't like turn off that one on the far side. It kind of regulates that through each side of the AC because it's automatic. If you want to turn off fluid one side, but I've never had any issues with them. I don't have any gripes about them. Yeah, they could be slightly better, but they work. You know, if you get a flat on this car, if you get a nail in your tire, that's one thing with sport cars. But how do you react to that situation? I have found that I keep a little impact drill with like a wood drill bit, maybe about 1/4 of an inch wide, and then I keep a tire patch kit. I keep a little mini air compressor in here, some slime or some rubber cement, and I have a little kit back here to where if my tire pressure goes down, I've got a nail. I don't expect a blowout at all. These are new tires. Don't really see that with new tires with good tread. But I recommend keeping that little kit in your car. You can spend 60 to 50 bucks getting those little things, and let me tell you, it has saved me. It is so nice to have in this car because you can't just pop on a spare, right? And a lot of people say using just a plug after you do a plug, recommend go to Discount Tire or wherever, get an actual plug in, because sometimes if you're pushing the car and it's getting hot and that plug can sometimes fly out. I have patched motorcycle tires, I have patched car tires probably 24 times, and I've never had one come out. If you do it right, you clean up the surface, you get it warm, you use proper rubber cement, you get it far enough in, never had an issue with that. So that's one thing that I highly recommend if you do own this car and you take it on anything more than like 45-minute trips. Just keep that in your car. It will save you. It will save you. Also, keep a little bit of soapy water in the car. Just keep a little bottle with some soapy water in there. It'll save you. It saved me. It's a huge thing that's nice to have in this car that I highly recommend. I'm gonna check gas mileage on this trip real quick. About 21 miles per gallon on that last stretch. Not bad, not bad. Premium is expensive, but yeah, cool. Stereo on this car is aftermarket online. Can't really speak to the OEM stereo, but the sound system on this, it's got those speakers. Getting in and out of this car, which I thought about on the gas station, a little bit low, is, I mean, it's a sports car, it's not the best. One thing that didn't surprise me that much, but the door, there's a also is everyone knows about the valve train issue. If your valve train is stock, get that addressed, whether it's the rockers, the valves themselves, the guides, the springs. There's something in there that fails that grenades the engine, and it is common. I'm telling you, it's not 1 in 1,000. I firmly believe, like, if you let the valve train be stock, sometime between 0 miles and 200k miles, you're going to grenade your engine because of this issue. And I firmly believe that. Now, you can fix that on the Z06. The LS3s have a lot better, I've heard a lot better things about the LS3, and I think also the LS7 is the harmonic balancer on the C6s. They wobble off. It's like a very common problem. It's, from what I know about it, it's not, oh, some of them have it. A lot of them have it, and it's probably going to be something you'll face. I know this one hasn't had it replaced. There's some other things with these cars that, oh yeah, the fuel level sensors systemically will go out, but the feeler gauges on the fuel level sensors, like, it is an extremely common issue. Almost every C6 Corvette owner that I've talked to has faced this issue. That's big. And let me tell you, if you take it to the dealer, it will cost you at least $1,500, at least. And mainly it's because of labor, and it is hard to get right. A lot of the videos you see out there is the third time they're dropping the tank because they don't get this one little plastic hose connected. It's a pain. I did it myself. One of the hardest jobs I've ever done. It took me almost 18 hours, front to back, doing it right, waiting, having some issues with these parts, having this one thing. Yeah, it took a long time. It took a long time. My check engine, so I replaced the left one. Within a few months later, the right one started going out, which I'm not surprised. Better to do. Honestly, a lot of people have the right one go out because people theorize that the right tank drains faster because your fuel pump is in the left tank and it cycles over from the right side tank to the other side. And so people theorize it drains faster and it's drier in there. I don't think there's any way to, like, mitigate that completely. I would say that if you have a C6 and you haven't experienced this issue, if you're going to let your car sit for more than a few days, try and keep the tank full.
this must be the reason that it...
But driven about 600-700 miles. Car has been great. I have burned about a half a quart of oil over 600-700 miles. Pretty good. My Dodge Ram truck with 190,000 miles burned about a quart of oil every 500 to 700 miles. It didn't smoke or anything. This car doesn't smoke, but you know, a heavily pushed V8, the more it's pushed, the more it's going to burn oil over time. My grandfather has had tons of Chevrolets, Fords with pushrod V8s. After 100K, cars that are pushed heavily, they burn oil. That's natural. That's with any car. My Toyota burns little to none between oil changes. Every V8 I have owned or my grandfather has owned with harder miles or higher mileage, they burn oil. So I've really enjoyed the ride. The car has been good. I'll probably do a little bit of night driving and get some of that on video showing the headlights, which I'm excited about. I'm looking forward to fixing this really minor exhaust leak. I'm on a pretty quiet road right now, but it's still a little bit audible. I think once I fix that exhaust leak, it'll quiet things down just a little bit. Other than that, the car has been good. Fuel level sensor is currently out, and it's been getting worse and worse and worse to where it just won't read. I'm pretty sure the left tank, since I replaced the fuel pump, should be reading just fine, but kind of makes me want to drop the right tank. I just know that's going to be a whole day's worth of work, and it's hard to get right, so it's like, not looking forward to doing that, but we'll need to at some point. Anyway, thought I'd give an update on the drive home. Made it home safe and sound. One thing I wanted to point out, whenever the car is hot, when you're checking the oil, this thing gets very hot and you can barely pull it out with your bare hands. Something small, but yeah, another thing. Everything in here gets cooked and can't really touch anything. Made it almost 800 miles non-stop. I mean, it was like 400 there, 400 back, but everything did good. Yeah, I went through probably over the 800 miles, a little over a quart of oil, which isn't terrible. So yeah, glad to be home.